Hey guys, tonight we begin our study in chapter 4 of the book of Jubilees. So let's get into it.
All right, chapter 4, Cain and Abel. And it says, in the third week in the second Jubilee, she gave birth to Cain, and in the fourth she gave birth to Abel. And in the fifth she gave birth to her daughter Awan. And in the first year of the third Jubilee, Cain slew Abel because Elohim accepted the sacrifice of Abel and did not accept the offering of Cain. And he slew him in the field, and his blood cried from the ground to heaven, complaining because he had slain him.
Hey, let's pause there for just a moment. So, in verse 1 and 2, this is kind of just typical stuff that we see in the book of Genesis, right? So this is not any new information coming in here, um, but I think we're going to see more about the acceptable sacrifice, if I'm not mistaken, here a little bit later on, whether it's in this chapter or another. But I think that's something we probably should discuss in a little bit later on too.
Yeah, and I think you do get a little bit of an addition of the time frame, like we talked about earlier. They didn't have the first child outside of the garden until after the first Jubilee. So now we can see what that schedule looked like and what that time frame looked like. And then also we get the first daughter. Jubilees is good about giving us a little bit more on the feminine side, not just the masculine side. So we get a daughter, and kind of intermingled with the two sons, even though the story's still going to be focused on the two sons there.
Well, we do have these as far as these children that are mentioned. We don't have mention of any other children.
Right.
We know that the first males were born out after the garden, but is it the first females?
All right, let's pick it back up in verse 4, and it says, and Yahuwah reproved Cain because of Abel, because he had slain him, and he made him a fugitive on the earth because of the blood of his brother, and he cursed him upon the earth. And on this account it is written on the heavenly tables, cursed is he who smiteth his neighbor treacherously, and let all who have seen and heard say, so be it. And the man who had seen and not declared it, let him be accused as the other. Verse 6 says, and for this reason we announce when we come before Yahuwah our Elohim all the sin which is committed in heaven and on earth and in light and in darkness and
everywhere.
There we go, everywhere.
Let's pause there for just a minute.
Yep.
I had to do all that scrolling just for that one word. Okay, so cursed is he who smiteth his neighbor treacherously. Going back, this is in verse 5. Cursed is he who smiteth his neighbor treacherously, and let all who have seen and heard say, so be it. And the man who has seen and not declared it, let him be accursed as the other. So that's putting something on us, right? So like if we see something like this happen, we are commanded by the Father to say something. So, we got that old that saying that stands pretty true in a lot of or a lot of people hold to is snitches get stitches, right? Or all that kind of stuff. But at least this particular thing here, Scripture's telling us, no, if we see something like this, we better say something, or we're accursed as well.
Yeah, that's powerful, man.
Yeah, and I like too that it kind of gives some of the onus back to the perpetrator. It's like even if no one was around, like there's no getting off scot-free. There's no ability to say like, well, if no one saw it, then I guess it didn't happen. No, God still very much holds you account for your deeds and your actions.
Right.
And then we look all the way through the New Testament. He goes all the way to your thoughts. So it's so much more than just I committed a crime or I committed a sin and I got away with it. Well, with God, there's no real getting away with it. And that really leads to that heart issue where I think we get to have that intimate relationship with the Father, knowing he knows our heart. And that's where he judges us, is at the heart level. So if we can keep our heart clean and our heart pure, then that's whenever we're going to be more closely aligned with the Father and the life that he has for us.
Absolutely. And hey guys, this is a good time to remind you, if you're getting anything good out of these studies that we're doing, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you can tag along with us on the next ones. All right, let's get back to it.
All right. Let's pick up in verse 7. It says, and Adam and his wife mourned for Abel 4 weeks of years. And in the 4th year of the 5th week, they became joyful, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare him a son, and he called his name Seth. For he said, Elohim hath raised up a second seed unto us, the earth instead. Raised up a seed, unto us on the earth instead of Abel, for Cain slew him.
Yeah, so the question that I was kind of thinking here is that there's 4 weeks of years. And to me, in my head, it's mathing out to about 28 years. What do you guys think of, or what do you see in that?
So a week is a representation of a week is 7 days,
Mhm.
but it's a week of years. So that tells me we're talking about 7 years, 7 years there. And then there's 4 of those. So 4 times 7 is 28. So yeah, 28 years is what I get out of that.
Cool. That's awesome that they give us like a little bit of a duration, a little bit of a ability to kind of count time. And then it seems that that's lining up right after that. It says, and in the 4th year of the 5th week. So now that we know about how long, now it seems like it's kind of giving us a calendar date, somewhere to kind of point us back in time and keep us in counting with the Jubilees and all that's been told to us so far. Does that make sense, or am I off on that?
No, that makes sense.
Sounds pretty good to me so far.
Yeah.
If anybody has anything different to add to that, though, please in the comments if we're missing this, and or if you have a different opinion about it, please share with us and let us know what you think about the 4 weeks of years and the time frame and what you think it means.
Yeah, so just real quick, I mean, obviously there's 2 ways of looking at it. One is the way that you described it, and another one would be 4 weeks of years, so 28 years, and then after that there would be 4 years and 5 weeks before they became joyful and Adam knew his wife again. So we could be talking about the way that you mentioned it, where it's given us a timeline as well as an amount of time that went by. Or it could also just be these 2 things are to be added together. I think what you said though makes a lot more sense, to be perfectly honest with you.
As I read it.
So, all right, well, let's get into it.
All right, in verse 8 it says, and in the 6th week he begot his daughter Azurah. And verse 9 it says, and Cain took Awan, his sister, to be his wife, and she bare him Enoch at the close of the 4th Jubilee. And in the 1st year of the 1st week of the 1st Jubilee, houses were built on the earth, and Cain built a city, and he called his name after the name of his son, Enoch.
We definitely have to address this. So the age-old question, where did Cain get his wife from?
Aliens.
From a saucer.
There's the answer.
It's pretty clear right there.
Yep.
So there's been speculation for years and years and years and years and years about where did Cain get his wife? Was there another race of people? Did God create another race of people? Was it just simply Adam and Eve had many children that were not even mentioned? And that's still a possibility.
Yeah.
But this tells us where Cain got his wife. So
yeah, I mean, the whole time I was thinking he was on the internet going to Russia to find one. So, I mean, that settles it all right there. Let's go.
It helps a little bit.
It helps a little bit, yeah.
I think it's interesting too. Again, I'm trying to understand the purpose behind a lot of the verbiage. But houses were built on the earth, and Cain built a city. So prior to that, were there no houses? Were they all kind of living kind of treehouse and huts and tents type stuff, or is using house as in like family and the beginning of lineage and things like that? The way it says built, so I'm guessing it's more of a physical dwelling place. But it's just interesting to think that far into the story in the 5th Jubilee, that's 250 some odd years, and that's the first time they got a house. So just kind of one of those fun things to look at and postulate on.
So yeah, I find that and so it says houses were built on the earth, and Cain built a city, and called its name after his son Enoch. So that's pretty cool. Like where did these cities come from? So Genesis gives us kind of an overview, this general piece of information. And in Genesis, we do see where the daughter's name is mentioned, but we never know why her name is mentioned.
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So this gives context to that. So we know why her name was mentioned now, because she's the one that became Cain's wife. And then we wonder about these cities and houses and things that we read about in Genesis. Well, Cain built them. There you go. So all of that questioning that's been had over all these years, this one verse answers all of that. That one verse, verse 9 in chapter 4, answers that age-old question.
It's filling in a bunch of gaps, isn't it?
A lot of gaps. So very cool.
Something I wanted to add into is kind of looking at some of the verses. It said this world is not our home, and when you look at the garden and that it's possibly taken off the earth, it's no longer available to visit currently the way the earth is set up, and then kind of to see Cain going through and like now building houses and building cities. It's almost like he's just saying, I want to establish my roots here on earth. And there's always something in the back of my mind where God's like, yes, do that, take care of yourselves, protect yourselves, don't literally sleep in the streets. But to kind of see maybe where Cain's mind was at, it was like, hey, this is it for me. This is where the best life is going to be, is here on earth. And so let me go ahead and build myself a house. Let me go ahead and build myself a city. Let me enjoy the things of earth and be more in the world versus being of the world. Or vice versa, being of the world, more of being in the world. And so yeah, I just kind of find that to be a little bit interesting to see maybe if that plays out in any kind of tangible way. And then also I think it's a little bit of a note here that's adding for us, that he did have a son named Enoch, and the city was named Enoch, because we're going to see as we read through, this is not the only Enoch. So now we have like
Right.
multiple places and multiple things and people that are named Enoch. So that's going to help us, as we read through our Bible, the canon, that we're going to see, well, here's Enoch, here's Enoch, here's Enoch. What's going on? Well, here it helps us to kind of decipher who and what these Enochs are.
Right.
Right.
And Jonathan, I kind of want to go back to what you were saying, or the statement you were making. Kind of walk me through this a little bit about when you said Cain was building things here on earth. What do you mean as far as like separated from heavenly things, or what was your biggest thing there with that? Because I'm trying to follow you on that one.
Yeah, no worries. That's kind of what I was getting at. I think it was more of just the idea of, we should be, especially after sin and after the fall. Yeah, we're now kind of bound here to this earth, to the physical, where God always wants to meet us at the spiritual level. And I think the more we get invested and the more we get involved with the physical things and the earthly things in our house and our HOA and our couch, and whether it's leather or whatever, I think the more that we dig in and we kind of put our roots into the earth and into our current living situation and our domain and all that, I think it does hinder our relationship with God a little bit, only by the fact of, well, we're good and we're comfortable and we're covered by what we can do with our own hands, versus just knowing that God's got us. And by no means am I saying it's bad to have things and it's bad to utilize the gifts and the blessings that God has given us. But it seems that when they were created, everything was back to its most pure state, and back in their pure state, they didn't have any houses yet. They didn't even have any cities or anything. So it was just, hey, we live to work, we live to eat, and we live to serve God. We're living to build, and we're living to grow, and we're living to put more, like I said, hands on when it comes to like our experience here on earth.
Right. And you know what? We don't have, at least at this point, we don't have rain on the earth, right? So
Yeah.
So we don't have that as far as weather for them to contend with. And the other thing is, we don't have any mention of any kind of, like natural disasters and that sort of stuff to reference at this point yet. So obviously it's not going to be as it was in paradise, like it was in the garden. But I'd say the earth would have been probably a much nicer place to be at this point in time, right?
I would agree. It was a very much nicer place to be. I would say my only comment on that would be on those thoughts would be this, that we've always been earthly bound. We've always been this is our place. We're we were not created to be in the heavens. We were this place that we are on right now is the place that we were created. That's why in Revelation, the New Jerusalem's coming down to us, where God is going to be with us here. And so we were always meant for this place. We weren't designed for the heavens. To be there, we would have to be in a whole different body to begin with. And so I didn't know if that was where you're going with it or not. So that's why I was trying to get a little bit of clarity on it. And I get what you're saying as far as being in the world. Yeah, we don't. It says be in the world, but not of the world.
Right.
And I get that. So for Cain, I think he was just doing his part. He was in his lane. He was like, you know what? Apparently he had the skills to pay the bills, so he could build a city. He could build houses. And of course, in here, this isn't the Enoch that's written about later.
Correct.
As far as the flood time. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of clarify that too on my end, that we were made for here. We were drawn out of the dust. Breath was given to us, and it says when we die, the dust we go and return back to. So until we have those new bodies. So
before we get going again, I did want to let everybody know too. By the way, as you're reading along with us here, if you'll look on the sides of the pages here, you can see the references. Oh, I didn't mean to highlight the whole thing. Good gracious! If you look on the side of the pages here, I'll just use my cursor. Hopefully, can you guys see my cursor on the page?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So right over here, you'll see a reference to where in Genesis you can relate this very specific scripture, and you'll notice that on all the different ones you can see where this is being referenced in Genesis. But also, right, you'll see some things like this 190 to 196 AM, right? So these are giving time frames. These are giving years as we would count them. Now, again, this is someone who has interpreted this. This is their calculations, and assuming this is correct, you do the math yourself as well, right? But assuming this is correct, this is giving us a time frame as to when this stuff is happening. So I think that's pretty cool. And then also you have some other references that are being given here as well. So anyway, just wanted to point that out. So let's get back to it.
Verse 10 says, and Adam knew Eve, or Hava, his wife, and she bare yet 9 sons.
Wait a minute. Do we have that? Do we have that referenced in Genesis?
9.
I don't
that was our German reference.
German reference to 9. No.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no more. That's what she's saying. No more. I give you 9 more sons.
9 sons.
Yep.
But it may or may not tell us, but it doesn't tell us right here that she had any more daughters. So I mean, they could have potentially had 50 more daughters. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
yeah. I mean, if this follows the same biblical narrative where the sons were more, apt to being spoken of over the girls, unless like earlier, Awana, what was her name? Is that I get it right? Awana, is that her name? Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's make sure. Awan, yeah. I think the reason why we're giving her name is just specifically because it's connecting to the story.
Correct.
So she could have had 20 daughters on top of that, and just none of them were connecting to the story, so they're not going to. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. All right.
Okay.
And verse 11, it says, in the 5th week of the 5th Jubilee, Seth took Azura, his sister, to be his wife. And in the 4th year of the 6th week, she bare him Enos. He began to call on the name of the Lord on the earth.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yes,
so here we start seeing some of the lineage stuff that we're going to get into in Genesis, which is very cool. All right.
All right. Is it going to? Is it? I don't know how this page flips. It goes. Okay, I see. Okay. All right.
It'll go down to the left.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Stick to the right. So
right then left
at all. Yeah. All right. Verse 13 says, and in the 7th Jubilee in the 3rd week, Enos took Noam, his sister, to be his wife, and she bare him a son in all the 3rd year, of the 5th week, and he called his name Kenan. Verse 14 says, and at the close of the 8th Jubilee, Kenan took Mahula-leth, his sister, to be his wife, and she bare him a son the 9th Jubilee in the 1st week in the 3rd year of this week, and he called his name Mahalalel. And verse 15 says, and in the 2nd week of the 10th Jubilee, Mahalalel took unto him to to wife Dinah, the daughter of Barachiel, the daughter of his father's brother, and she bare him a son in the 3rd week in the 6th year, and he called his name Jarrett. For in those days the angel of Yahuwah descended on the earth, those who are named the watchers, that they should instruct the children of men, and they should do judgment and uprightness on the earth.
All right.
I knew we were going to stop there, boy.
Oh, yeah, we definitely got to stop there. Okay, so we're about to get into
we may have
big
to pick
subject.
this one up on the next one because there's a lot here.
So we're going to get into we're going to shift kind of subjects here a little bit when we're talking about the days of Jared and that sort of stuff. But before we even address any of that, let me ask you guys this. Do you guys remember anything about these other women being mentioned in Genesis? Because I do not.
Not off the top of my head, no.
So not only do we get reference to who these women, the names of these women that they took to be their wives. But we also get a reference as to where they come from, right? And a time frame in which it happened. So I think that's super wonderful information for you to put these puzzle pieces together.
Right. These weren't just random people they found by the brook. He's like, hey, this is your sister. It was at this time. Yeah. And obviously this is before we have all the, the rules against, inter family marriage and stuff like that. This is our most pure DNA. This is God understanding the nature of man and saying, hey, there's only 6 people on the earth. It's all good. Now there's a 7 billion. You don't need to do that anymore. So let's not, interact that way. But I did find it interesting how fast time went all of a sudden. It's like, oh, and then the 9th Jubilee, and then this thing and this thing. It was like, man, time started flying in the story where we have a lot of detail kind of getting us through the first 50, 100, 150 years. And then now we're, almost up to 500 years from creation. So time's definitely moving and grooving here. Adam would have been, 500 some odd years old by the time where we're at in this story. So just kind of
he was hitting midlife crisis by now.
All right,
go back up for me just a smidge to Mahalalel.
Mahalalel?
Yeah, Mahalalel.
Okay.
I'll holler at you later. Go up a little bit more. Let me see if that's. Oh no, it was Muleleth. Is that the one? Is that saying that's a form, or is it saying she who praises God? Is that what that's referring to on the side note?
Yeah, it says a feminine form, and her name is equivalent to she who praises God.
I thought that was pretty cool that was put in there. I was like, that's neat, man.
That is pretty cool.
I like the fact that the women are being. I like the involvement of this. I think that's a neat part to put into the story.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I just saw that. I just want to jump back up to it real quick.
You know what I actually think would be a really cool thing that we could do? Maybe we should take the time to do this. Now that we have some of these female names and we can figure out what their name means by going back to the Hebrew, right? All right. So how it's been done where the patriarchs, how their names and from creation, how their names was used to show the story, right? The promise, the entire scriptures, right? The story is told of salvation, Yeshua. I mean, the whole deal, right? What if there's something to the women's names too that we haven't addressed?
I like where you're going with that. I like that.
That could be really
Jonathan,
cool.
You got homework to do, son. You better get on it.
Well, part of my homework already is some of these names are, just to kind of edit back to what we were saying earlier. Some of these names are found in the canon, like in Genesis 5 time frame. We have Mahalalel and different names. So there are a few of the names in there that I just don't believe there's every single one of them, and by no means anywhere near the detail that we have here. So it's not that there's none of them; they're just select and different.
Right. Cool.
Very cool. Very cool. So let me say that. Let me ask this. Let's go down to right here. This is in verse 15. Let me ask you guys what you think about this. It says, and he called his name Jared, for in his days the angels of Yahuwah descended on the earth. Sorry, my dog keeps trying to come in here and get me. For in his days the angels of Yahuwah descended on the earth, those who are named the Watchers. So I don't know that I really have a question for you. I just want to get your thoughts, I guess. So we think of these as a lot of people think of these as the bad guys, but up until this point, they weren't the bad
No.
guys, right? Up until this point, they were angels of Yahuwah
Mm-hmm. Yep.
descended on the earth, right? Those who are named the Watchers. And real quick, anybody want to give me some information about what the job of the Watchers was to be?
What it was to be.
Well, I know, like in scripture, that's where I try to stick a lot of time in. The only mention of the word watchers is in Daniel. It's referenced in Genesis 6 in that whole Nephilim time frame. But
Mm-hmm.
whenever we do get that word, obviously now we're not just hearing this for the first time. And I think sometimes whenever we hear stuff, we're saying, oh, well, that's just a one-off, or, oh, that's maybe a description for something that doesn't really matter. It clearly matters. And I think that here it's helping us to understand a little bit more of God's intent. He has no intent of evil or to do harm on anyone or anything. So when he sends these watchers, they're there for a very good thing, a very positive thing. Now, what they decided to do, that's where, unfortunately, we get further into the story where we can read here and we read in Enoch, where there's some bad things that happen. We can read in Genesis 6 where we know the result of the bad things that happened. And so, yeah, it's fun, and to me at least, to see that, yeah, we can start to put all these pieces together. We've just had, well, there's a watcher mentioned in Daniel. We know it's referencing to Genesis 6, but how does it all play together? What's the purpose? Why is God making sure to write this down to make sure that people in the future get to hear this? If it was of no importance, it wouldn't be in there. So it's of some meaning to us and some purpose for us to hear. And I think it's going to be, more clear and more evident as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my initial take on that.
Absolutely.
Well, we know from Genesis, was it chapter 6, verse 4? Or is it 4:6? I think it's 6, verse 4, right?
Genesis 6, yeah. Like 1 through 4.
Yeah, I mean, we see what happens with the Watchers. It says they looked upon the daughters, and the daughters of men, and they lusted after them. So, therefore, leaving their first estate and the job that God, the assignment that they had over the earth. And in Jubilees right here, we see where it says, and that part of their job was to instruct the children of men.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we can't do this deep dive right now because I'll go all over it. So for another video, when we do the next one, maybe we'll go more into it. But we see that within the heavenly realms, these guys in the days of Jared, these watchers, they were watching us, saw that the women, they're like, hey, y'all look good. And decided to leave their first estate, and the rest is history from there.
Right. So here we see what their job is to do, right? That they should do judgment and uprightness. So not just teach, they should instruct the children of men, and they should do judgment and uprightness. So they were supposed to implement some type of judgment here as well, which is pretty neat. So what we're about to get into is we're about to get into a lot more context of this missing information that we that is in the book of Genesis, because Genesis 6 is very vague, and it's really the only time we hear any mention.
You get like a very small snapshot. I mean, super small.
Absolutely. So we are going to dive into that on the next episode. We'll see you then. God bless.
Ciao.
Blessings.